This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
ECR Minerals have terminated the non-binding agreement with Octo Holdings Pty Limited regarding the sale of the Mercator Gold Australia assets there. Octo failing to make the satisfactory progress on the proposed transaction. And ECR will now explore discussions with other interested parties. Well, joining us now, of course, is the MD, Nick Tulloch. Nick, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thanks, Mark. How about you?
Yes, good, thank you, Nick. So I'm looking forward to sort of catching up and understanding this announcement a bit more. So let's just set the scene. So MGA has those tax losses, that's 75 million Australian dollars. And you've also got your gold, of course, and antimony tenements as well, including Baillieston. Now, as I understand from reading the RNS, you kind of made the case that rising gold and antimony prices have therefore increased the strategic value of Baillieston. And you're sort of considering reconsidering your approach to these tax losses by perhaps retaining Baillieston and restructuring the sale there of MGA. So you've got a few options on the table, but first of all, just on the tax losses and how Baillieston ties into it, you're seeing here effectively you can potentially increase the value of Baillieston and sell the tax losses with that increased valuation of the antimony.
Well, yes. I mean, I'd probably put it stronger than that. We think Baillieston's value has already increased based on our reanalysis of drilling core from a few years back. We've found some very high grades. In fact, probably one of the highest grades of antimony discovered in Australia to date at 32%. I think just on that alone, I think Baillieston has increased. Now, when we started the tax loss sale or started planning, that was in the sort of the first part of last year. When we started working with Octo, that was in the autumn of last year, UK autumn. A lot has changed in that time. Antimony prices have continued to rise, gold prices have continued to rise, and our opportunity to do something at Baillieston is now very much front and centre of our thinking. It was always in our budget, by the way. When we raised money at the end of last year, it was always part of the plan that we would do something with Baillieston. I mean, clearly we didn't, because at the time we had heads of terms existing with a third party, with Octo, and it would have just been inappropriate to interfere with that whilst that was ongoing.
So effectively, as I understand, that there are three options. I'll come on to the third one in a minute, but the first one would be to effectively carry on as normal with the tax losses, so talking to the other interested parties away from Octo there. But also that the second option would be to increase the value at Baillieston with the funded step-out drilling you've got, and effectively market it as a better package, effectively to other interested parties.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's probably just worth setting the scene. When we started the sale of the tax losses, bear in mind, these tax losses have been around for 20 years, and we're not the first management to say this is quite an interesting asset. We should start a sales process. We've maybe got further than others have in the past, but we always knew it was going to be a very difficult process. And I genuinely believed when we started advertising it, we'd be lucky to get one or two maybe interested parties, seriously interested parties. I need both hands now to count the number of people who have contacted us expressing interest. So the response we've had for the potential sale of MGA has been much better than expected. Also, as you've rightly said, things have changed. So, commodity prices are up, as I mentioned a minute ago. Our opportunity to bring Blue Mountain into production and essentially use the tax losses ourselves has changed. And of course, there's now more people in the mix. I'm always drawn to a sporting analogy, and there's an element of me thinking here that Octo have probably dropped the ball. This was a good deal for them. I think the value of MGA has gone up. Octo dropped the ball, so it's now an opportunity for us to take that ball, reset the game, and just think about the best way to carry on the play. And as you say, we've got other people interested. We've got the ability to go out and drill Baillieston, which is in our budget, and we've got the ability to bring Blue Mountain into production, start generating revenue and profit ourselves, and use our own tax losses. So there's an interesting opportunity that's been created out of today's events, and I think it's important we take the time to analyse and consider what is the best option for us to, back to my sporting analogy, which direction we send the ball in.
Okay. Now, of course, you've mentioned Blue Mountain there. We talked about that, I think it was last week or the week before on our Stockbox premiere. They're getting it into production. You're doing aerial surveys, ground penetrating radar, and then the wash plant procurement here. You're expecting, I think, initial revenue estimates of around 470 Australian dollars, and potentially more if you're going to scale up there. So this is the third option that you mentioned there, effectively get Blue Mountain into production and then utilize those tax losses to offset tax that would be due from revenues from the project here. Now, it's funny you mentioned these have been around for 20 years. I've said this before publicly. The first ever mining stock I bought was in 2013, ECR Minerals, and guess what was being talked about at the time? MGA's tax losses. And I have a feeling of deja vu, sort of thinking that something's going to be done. And I'm not sure if I'm correct, but I seem to recall a similar RNS saying, oh, actually, we think we can use these internally. I can't be sure on that, but I just have a feeling that kind of RNS came out. So I get a feeling of sort of deja vu. Are these ever going to crystallize? Now, you, granted, have got more options, I think, now available to you than back in 2013, 14. But the key really is to crystallize them. So you've either got to get into production at Blue Mountain here, and that's probably, I'd say, the best option for you to use them internally, or indeed sell them on for cash, and cash is king. I know you've got funds for the remainder of the year, but cash is king. So, I mean, are you going to do it? Are you going to make use of these tax losses?
Yeah, look, I think we are. Maybe something just to make absolutely clear is we terminated with Octo, not the other way around. Octo are still keen on talking to us on buying those tax losses. Maybe they'll come back, maybe they won't. But it was our decision to terminate. So this is not a case of the buyer wasn't interested, we couldn't sell the tax losses. We've taken the proactive decision to say, look, let's just stop the clock and let's just think about some different options that we can proceed with on those tax losses, and also our wider operations. And I didn't actually go back through ECR's history, so I don't know exactly what was said in 2013.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be unreasonable at the time for the management to think they can use the tax losses internally. It's certainly better value. And even if we just look at the Octo deal, we were prepared to sell Baillieston and MGA and the tax losses for $4.5 million. Now, the tax losses in our hands, based on current tax rates and the current shape of ECR, would be worth $18.75 million. So we were prepared to take quite a big discount simply to get the cash up front. Now, that was 6 months ago. What we have now is a project in Queensland that is literally months away from going into production. So are we not better off to at least consider whether we can use those tax losses there? And the numbers you gave a moment ago, if we're doing $470,000 Australian dollars of revenue a month, we estimate that within 6 years, that would produce enough profit. I'm using a constant gold price here, but that would produce enough profit to use $4.5 million worth of tax loss. In other words, the value that Octo are paying. So in 6 years, we'd essentially recover Octo's position, if you like, but we'd still have 3/4 of the tax losses still available. Now, if we scale up Blue Mountain, and that's one of the things we're looking at, that time period could be sooner. We could use more of the tax losses. These are all discussions that are ongoing at the moment. But the right thing to do, given the Octo process was taking longer, the right thing to do is to stop the clock and just have a look at different options to get the best value out of what we have.
I think that's key as well that you mentioned there, that you terminated it and not Octo, because I know, certainly talking to Mike, he doesn't like to hang around, he likes to get things done, and I'm sure you've got a similar attitude here. And I think you mentioned in the RNS there that you really want to prioritize maximizing long-term value for shareholders over a quick sale that perhaps is not the best solution. So I mean, I think that's quite a positive thing that you've terminated it and looking to effectively all your different options here. I mean, if you were to sort of set out, I don't know, let's talk about the next quarter here. You're basically going to continue marketing the tax losses as they are in the standalone vehicle, whilst moving to into production at Blue Mountain, because of course the drilling at Baillieston, that's kind of a longer term thing, isn't it? We don't want it to drag on sort of much longer if we can help it, I guess.
Well, not necessarily actually. So the Baillieston drilling was always in our budget. It was earmarked as part of the fundraising from last year. We've already started talking to drilling contractors. There's availability of rigs. We could, in theory, be in Baillieston in the next couple of months and start a drilling campaign. If anything's going to hold us up in Baillieston, it's going to be making sure we've got a plan in place. What we have in Victoria are generally quite narrow veins of quite high grade deposits, and I mean, put simply, drilling the hole in the right place is going to have a big impact on the results that come through. So we don't want to just rush a rig out tomorrow afternoon and start drilling. Yeah, I'd rather spend a little bit of time with the team and make sure we've got a very clear plan. And we alluded to this in today's announcement. There is historic reports of drilling just to the northwest of where we've been drilling in the past. That's actually the direction we think the geological trend runs in. So there's some quite good evidence to put together. So the availability of rig is not a problem. Funding, it's already in the budget. We'll get a plan in place. We will drill Baillieston. But also, you're right, we will continue the discussions with the other parties. I say maybe even Octo will come back in. But just because you've got an asset for sale doesn't mean you have to take any offer that comes. And I guess that's maybe the learning over the last 6 months. We were flattered by Octo's interest. We were flattered by the responses we got from other parties. But now we've got a little bit more information on our own business and also an understanding of the value of the tax losses. As I say, we'll just stop the clock and just have a think about what the right thing is to do and run those 3 options, sale, Baillieston and Blue Mountain in parallel, and we'll get best value for shareholders.
And just a final thought then, it sounds to me like perhaps the next 3 months are going to be quite important for ECR, drilling at Baillieston potentially, and of course getting things going on the ground at Blue Mountain. So how will you manage that period of 3 months? Considering if another party does indeed come in and say, hey, we want to buy these assets, how will you manage sort of building more value into it, but against sort of selling them if there's a party ready to go?
I think we have to see what the offer is if we get an offer. But also, we don't have to sell Baillieston as part of the tax losses. So Australian law is pretty similar to UK law. If you're selling tax losses, they sit with the company that has incurred the tax losses, that's MGA. The company has to be a going concern. It has to have a real operation. You can't just sell it as a shell with the losses. You have to have some operations in there. Now, 6 months ago, we thought the right thing to do was put Baillieston in, but we have 2 other tenements in Victoria. We have Tambo and Creswick. In all honesty, I'll be loath to part with either of them. They're both good prospects, but there's a discussion to be had. And depending on what a prospective buyer might want, depending on what they may offer, depending on what we think the value is for either Tambo or Creswick or even Baillieston, there are multiple different conversations. This is not a cookie cutter approach. There's a number of different variables, and we would have to consider where we think we can get to with a prospective buyer. Also, bearing in mind what we think we could do with Blue Mountain, and to the extent we could use the tax losses there. So this is a good thing. We've got a number of different options on the table. I accept investors will be disappointed that we haven't, received a check for $4.5 million today, but turning that around, we do have the opportunity now to think about what the best opportunity or best solution is to make use of those tax losses, either internally or in a different form of sale.
Okay, and finally, what would you say to shareholders who perhaps do think, oh dear, this hasn't worked out, we're in the same situation again, this will drag on and on and on? I mean, I'm sure you want a conclusion as much as they do.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd go back to what I said before. We took the decision to terminate. That was our call. We could have put out an announcement today to say Octo didn't quite get there on the 28th. We're going to extend. We're going to sort of roll the dice again. And we could have done that, as many times as needed. I don't think that's a particularly sensible way to run a company. I don't think that's a particularly sensible way to run a sale. We've got to be a little bit more definitive, particularly when we've got so many other options on the table. Other buyers, Baillieston, and using them internally. So I do accept there'll be some disappointment. Genuinely, a few weeks ago, I was optimistic that we would get the deal over the line with Octo. I think it would be fair to say in the back of our minds, we always wondered, have we done the right thing putting Baillieston in the MGA package for Octo? Should we have looked at something else? It's probably no coincidence Octo wanted Baillieston, given the rising interest in antimony. But there was always in the back of minds, have we done the right thing? And back to my sporting analogy. They've dropped the ball. This is an opportunity for us to take it and just to reset the play and just think about what the best thing is to do. And so, I'm sorry for shareholders who wanted a much faster result. But the longer term solution is so much more important than just getting a result on the board, very, very quickly. So, it's an odd day. It's a little bit bittersweet, but I think the long term opportunity now absolutely shines through in terms of what we can do with the company.
Okay, good. Well, thank you very much, Nick, for taking the time to explain the rationale behind that. And looking forward to the next 3 months, as I say, sounds like it'll be a fair bit going on. So I'm looking forward to continuing to follow what you're doing.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.